if you have a fantastic, enthusiastic client, then architect can be really flowing. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here. And thank you to Mark for the invitation. I am coming from Copenhagen, so I'm actually fulfilling the square and also balance, the feminist part of that male talk. Yes. So, but without any other comments. That's good. Street Smart is actually Mark's title for me. I don't know what it means, but actually we try to discuss it in the office. And I think it's a slang for streetwise. How do we actually achieve skills to behave in a proper way in society? And that's actually my leading guide to this talk. Just to how do we actually achieve these qualities, the quality in the way we behave, the way we plan, the way we talk to each other, the way we exchange, to follow up to the former discussion. And I think, now I had to find out. I think that's leading to what I'm going to talk about, because you know that the IQ actually is how we measure, the human intelligence. And we know that if we have about 140, 150, we might be able to cope with some of the challenges as an architect in society. But transferring that to urban IQ, can we actually evaluate the way we act, the way we plan? Who do we ask? And actually, what type of society are we actually dealing with? I think I need my glasses. It's I have a lot of experience, so it's because it takes something on my side. So I try to challenge myself a little, because I'm curious about these. How do we actually creatively discuss our behaviorism? And I think for many years we have been discussing a lot of parameters, how to work, how to do things. But cross down to three themes. I think anytime we start a project, we discuss the shared vision. I'll come back to all these. And also the holistic vision, the holistic approach, how we actually talk about the requirements in campuses, in cities. They are different. So how do we create that different identity, which is absolutely necessary to create atmosphere, to be in a urban setting, which actually have a specific idea and identity. And then I think they were discussing before what are the Nordic approach, and I think this is about social programming. I think to me it's very much about how to secure that diversity, which is in any problem that we discuss today is actually a question of creating, different ownerships, but also diversity in culture, in perspectives, in nationalities, in religious perspective, etc. And everything comes down to the discussion about the role of the architect. Actually, this morning, yesterday I wrote a small message to my son. He's studying in Vienna in Hani Rashid's studio. And I said, we're going to discuss, I actually don't know what everything is about. And he said, everybody, you created all the problems yourself. Now we have to invent creative solutions to everything we did. And actually, this is this turning time all the time. First 4 slides about the office. We are positioned in Copenhagen, and I think the most important part of our office is actually our dog, because a dog in an office actually create, specifically because we work with a lot of Swedish, and in Sweden they're more formal than we are in Denmark. And if a Swedish professor is entering our office with a maca in his bag, and it's taken by the dog, with a then the atmosphere immediately, changes. And I think this is actually, when we ask our clients, this is a big issue. We are organized in 4 different units: housing, topologies, campus, universities, city, space, landscape, and research and communication. And I think the research part is not a separated thing. It's actually going into creating themes, concepts for anything we do. I hold a Ph.D. a long time ago, but it's actually, I think it's a link that we all the time have. Also, we have a philosopher, we have different type of people, which I think is rather important. These are most of them actually projects in Sweden. We work in various campus areas, last in Svalbard in north of Norway. And I think some of the strategies and theories are actually adapting to all the contexts, the cultures, and even these very strange settings. In the urban scale, it's both in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and I think some of the issues that I'm proposing to discuss later on is actually the same raised in all countries. We are very much collaborating on this shared vision thing. And in our research department, we are focusing on public space as catalyst for change. We have a Ph.D., a business Ph.D. We do books about campuses and how to future secure campuses. And I think all the time this seeking, I think this is what is fun by having an office which is your own. You can actually decide which type of topics is actually relevant for you just now. I think one thing which is at the core of everything is the knowledge. The change in society is that for 10, 15 years ago, we actually didn't think about knowledge as an economic factor. I think knowledge is a driver for any urban development just now, and I think in a global perspective, if we scan universities and knowledge areas, innovation districts, the knowledge about things are really, really in focus. So I think from writing about creative class, I think this is a time where the critical mass is actually getting more and more important, and we have to all the time to question what type of society do we want to live in. The knowledge is derived very often from a small anti-monument in Berlin. You were talking about Berlin just before. In front of Humboldt, there's a small, you might know it, there's a small monument which is actually a hole in the square, and it's actually it's only empty shelves. And it stems out from 1933, where Goebbels actually burned down 20,000 Jewish books, which actually was representing the knowledge, the power in that society. And I think by remembering that, how knowledge and actually just writing, just creating words and then spreading the words one hand is actually incredible, powerful. And today when we see it actually spread out to be a part of anything in society, everything in society. This is from Seattle. And it's any production of knowledge in libraries, in schools, in universities, in campuses. Everything is so present. So it's interesting to see how the role of knowledge cities, universities, and businesses actually is going to take part and also create a commitment between the three. I think when we are planning either in cities or in campuses, it is based upon requirements. It's needs from people, and I think to decipher between the city and the campus to creating that different identity. They're not supposed to be alike. Universities and campuses are supposed to be created by learning. You know, it's a one-time experience to go to a university. So of course it should have this atmosphere of learning and social needs, where actually in the city you have the life forming. You know, we have a lot of segments of different types of life, but also the body and the way that you actually behave in the city. So back to this strategic discussion about the city, the business, the campus. I think we see it in any discussion today, that the triple helix, which of course is a known phenomenon, but actually creating what type of spaces they actually need, what type of qualification they can give back, but also what I'm writing in the middle, space for collaboration. I think it's what we talk about is actually these knowledge exchange platforms, which is where, you know, the needs of the businesses and the needs of campuses and so on is exchanged, but also giving a new innovative approach to what we're doing. So many years ago, it's not more than 10 years, but 8 years ago, we actually did a huge research upon campuses in the world. But I think what is still actually in question is that any university or any school that are two together would like to be a campus. We talk very much about of the classical university as defined by walls and introvert and monofunctional, and everything is today is actually based upon multifunctionality, but also the professional invitation that campuses and universities are actually reaching out to the city. And how do we do that, and how can the university be visible within the city so that they can actually economically drive from that? So actually looking at a lot of international campuses, of course, they have different urban strategies. I think what is interesting for me is actually that it's not only university, it's not only a question of research and education and learning and so on, but it's always a question of having an urban strategy. If you look just at Barcelona, you know, there is this Snabel 22, and I think they always have an urban strategy, and that's why they have to link and have to collaborate in these organizations within the university. There's a lot of information in these, but I still have only 20 minutes. So, a shared vision, how do we create that? I think that very often architects are asked to look into the future. Our clients, the municipalities and so on, they are actually asking us to look into the future. And I think in French it's called, they call it futurible, and actually it's a question of looking into the future, to be proactive, to be foreseen. It's actually something that animals can't do. Only human beings are able to be foreseen. And I think to do that in scenarios, to do that in various ways, not to be precise, but actually creating the stepwise so that you can actually follow the vision in a process with a lot of various stakeholders. And I think in this way, it's actually the role of the architect is all the time a part of this, because before we were actually masters, and now we are facilitators. We are creating not only design and aesthetics, we are creating the process. So that asks for a lot of new skills for students. So when I'm examining that, that's actually, I'm using Örebro, where we just finished the whole entrance area for Örebro University. We won the competition in 2010, and actually, as you can see, the city is 2 kilometers away from the university, and actually no one could see anywhere that this is a university city. So they didn't have that self-understanding that this is a quality for the city. And I think also, if we look at the comparative advantages that actually then Örebro should, of course, compare itself with Stockholm, with Uppsala, and so on. And how do they do that? By just investing in the campus and in the university. And I think a lot of is actually explained in this diagram, where actually the city, the business, and the campus very often are actually thinking about their own role, but where as soon as they have the shared narrative, then it gives a potential new network. It gives a lot of new ways of thinking, but also potential of creating a synergy between the businesses, so that you can actually create new education at the university. So this is actually the basic entrance for the competition. This is the existing buildings. And of course, it's very tempting just to continue that circle. But of course, we didn't. It's quite a huge university just now. It's added on medicine study as well. So they had a fantastic dean, which is always a part of a good process. It's the client. If you have a fantastic, enthusiastic client, then architect can be really flowing. It's great. So this is actually some of the small diagrams from the competition, because this was the intention, and I think it changed the whole self-understanding in the university, but also in the city. So starting creating a place like this is very much a question of discussing all the needs. The student needs actually is so that students are not learning sitting like this. They're actually learning when they go out and have a coffee, because no one can actually remember anything from seeing and sitting like this. So there is a lot of things where you have to facilitate for another way of creating that knowledge production, which is in question. This is the winning, and actually this is the business school which is inaugurated. This is research housing, student housing. There's a small book store, and it's a cafe, and it's totally open. So it's actually an invitation to the city as well. I think the funny thing is here that the old term campus is actually, we see that as a green field between American university buildings. But campus is actually does mean the empty space. So in Latin. So actually, by turning this empty space into an urban space where you can actually exchange between the city and the university is rather important for us. This is also a part of the strategy, which is actually what you can say inside out. That all the different activities along the street that actually links the spaces together actually expose what they actually do, so that there is a connection between all the public spaces. I have 5 minutes still. It's good. So what I think, what we have been curious about is actually how do we continue creating new campus models, which actually is not the same but a little bit different, but still actually trying to keep the identity of the university and making sure that the city is still welcome. So what they actually did was creating this. We created this big plaza, which is a part of the whole strategy and the whole. We have landscape architects that have been taking care of that, of course, but I think it's again a question of having a place where you can informally enter the university, where you can sniff your way. I I think a lot of universities are actually missing the chance to invite people in just informally and making a little bit, you know, what are they doing here? Can I actually listen to a lecture and so on and be a little bit wiser? They did that as ETH in Zurich, and I think they did it with fantastic luck, because today ETH Zurich is a really important place also to visit. The third part is actually the future securing. I think that what I just told is actually the creating both housing, shops, offices, various potential of just coming in, renting, or just being a part of the atmosphere. I think the social programming in other fields would be actually to make sure that you can actually create a diversity where you are not allowed to be a part of it. But I think that you can create places where it's so informal that you just enter and you just go in. You sit, you can actually have a presentation, but you can also just enter and have a meeting with, you know, one from other institutes, or the city is actually inviting in for concerts and so on. There's a huge concert hall also in the building for more than 500 persons. And of course, when creating what we call new meeting grounds, it's important for students that they in this situation are just a part of a group discussion, but they can also withdraw. We work with the terms for many, for all, for few, and I think to be a part of a group discussion, but also be, you know, withdraw a little bit, but also just to be the observer is really important, because this is a question of belonging, and I think a lot of students, even in Denmark, actually are leaving their studies because they are not having a social network. So this informality is a part of what is really important. I think also that you can have, this is a proposal where actually we have both spaces you can rent for a day, or you can actually book for a day, or you can book for 2 hours and so on. And I think, again, you have this looseness, which is a part of, now it's really empty on this picture, but normally it looks like this. This is actually where they invite some people from the city to have lectures and so on. And I think to have that universities opening up without losing their own self-understanding, but also their identity, is really important. The last 3 slides is actually about, we're working very much in Sweden. We like the mentality, and I think in Sweden we are talking more, and then suddenly we act. It's a long pre-talk. And I think this is a mentality, as we as Danes normally we came with a, you know, now we know exactly what to do very fast, but we can sit for 3, 4, 5 meetings and just talk about dogs, kids, learning and so on. And after that, and then we say, okay, now we know each other, and now we can collaborate. And I think that's something we have to learn, and I think it works fine for us. This is because I'm fascinated by the transition and the transformation of Malmö. We have been there since mid-90s with the planning of Högskolan på Universitetsholmen. And I have 2 pictures from MEC, which is a competition as well, which is actually a building which is that turning element of city, university, business, moving city, because actually here you have the rest of the university today, and here you have Bo01, and you have the whole university, which is actually turning to be a university here around 1st of January. So this is actually And I think some of the philosophy behind it is actually, again, to create a place. And again, without the guy in charge, it's not possible. It has to be an incredible, fascinating team that's behind. MEC is moving Evolution City, and it's a place where smaller businesses into filmmaking is positioned. And there is a big restaurant and a lecture hall in the ground, and this is actually where you exchange. Every Friday, every one Friday per month, there is a huge bar, of course. But of course, things are, it's a question of public-private transparency and so on. But I think everything is about both, and you have to make sure that there is something which is necessarily closed, and there's something which actually opens up where it's necessary to do that, to have that communication. It's again a fantastic atmosphere, because the complexity of the house is a part of the way that you actually orientate yourself and so on. It's in that way. And you have again these specific places where you can rent just a table for just hours, months, or whatever. My final is actually about the role of the architect. I've stolen between Superman and supervisor from Christine Feyerabend, who is a very good friend from Berlin. And I think that very, very nicely describes the dilemma we actually are in as architects. I think we have to, and I say that because I know there are a lot of students here as well, I think we have to gain our respect in the process. In Sweden, we very often are cut off before we actually are going on with the project, and I think that leaves us with detailing which is not satisfying. So I think that's one part we have to fight for, but we also have to acknowledge that we are not only creating aesthetics, we are those who actually are talking about ethics in the process, in the way we behave, in the way we act. We are not the masters anymore. We are actually facilitators of a lot of processes, and I think that asks for new skills. I think the education and our School of Architecture have to be very much aware of this change of role in society, because that means that we have to communicate in a totally different way in the future. So it should have been a lady, but actually Superman is not a lady just now. So this was my final term. Thank you.
Thank you, Superwoman. Let's sit down and have a little chat.
Let's do that.
You can sit in that chair there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
The fact that Malmö Högskola is situated smack in the middle of the city centre.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to do with that?
Yeah.
And what?
At the time where it's the planning of the university, it was actually when the harbor was closing down.
Yes.
And in that process of turning Universitetsholmen into Universityholmen,
yes,
we had a process supervising a process with the stadsdirektøren.
The
former one.
The city director.
Yeah.
Is that Christer Larsson or no? That was earlier. He was a city architect then.
Mats Olsson,
that's right.
Yeah. So we were actually facilitating the process and the competition about the Lærerhøjskole and how to create a university which was so integrated with the urban situation.
Mm. Why is that important?
It was important in Malmö because they had this identity of being a workers' social democratic city. And I think to compete a little bit with Lund, they had to be central, and I think to have that life into the old city of students passing by from the central station and so on is a part of what you can actually gain instead of putting it outside. So they actually created that synergy between urban integration of a campus and the city and the development of Bo 08 and so on. So it was really clever done. They did it themselves, but we were part of that.
Yes, yes. Would you say that it's when you visit Örebro, for example, where the university is really on the outskirts of the city, do you feel that this is an outdated structure, having it so far outside of the city centre?
No, it's not outdated because it's a natural situation in many cities. But I think we have to cope with that, and then we have to make the university visible in the city. Yeah. We came to the train station with Akademiske Hus, and there were no signs that there were a presence of a university. No. If you go around in Manchester, for instance, you would see that they have small boards in the streets talking about lectures in the university. Lectures about Platon's something. I think that's fascinating. That's a question of being proud to have that knowledge in the city, so you can do it by plug out, plug in. Yes. You can do it strategically.
Exactly, and that expression is something you often use in your work, right? Yeah. Plug in, plug out. You didn't mention it so much here.
No, maybe it was a fault. I'll do that next time.
But what does it mean in practicality? Could you give an example?
It means that you strategically, everything is about strategy and theories, I think, to try to rethink how we act. I think you can take, for instance, a lecture from the city, from the university, and put it in, and you can actually have that visibility of the university within the city. Yes. You can have a bookstore which is academic books placed in the city instead of out in, and you can actually invite people to eat at the. I've always been irritated. We have worked for many years at DTU, Denmark's Technical University, and they have 4 huge cantinas. Yeah. But they are only open at the same time, so they don't overlap, and they serve exactly the same food. And at ETH in Zurich, they have a Japanese restaurant, they have a German restaurant, and they complement each other. So I think so. It's a question of creating a strategy of how you would be visible and how you would have the city being visible at the university. So it can be activities, it can be physical science, it can be exhibitions, it can be a lot of things. In Örebro they always do actually. One day around the year their inauguration year, yes. They have one day where all the professors with research themes. They give small lectures of 15 minutes. Yeah. It's a TED talk, Örebro, something like that. So to go there to see what and also force physicians and medicines and to talk in a language which is understandable. I think that's just a fantastic idea because it inspires people to further dig into all the knowledge that are produced at the university.
The problem, I think, for Örebro is that they've got this fantastic campus. I've been there and seen it. You've done a wonderful job. It's like moving around in a city, actually, within the university, within your architecture. Yeah. But the problem for Örebro is holding on to the talent, isn't it? When people are finished with university, they move to Stockholm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's of course that's a strategy. That again, the city strategy that you have to create jobs, but you can also say that the infrastructure is also a part of that. I think, and I know that in Sweden you are doing all these fast trains. I'm in this Trafikverkets Arkitekturråd, and it's interesting how you can
you're on the board for Trafikverket.
You can diminish these differences by giving a lot of possibilities of just taking from Uppsala to Stockholm, from and of course Örebro is a little further away, and I think it's a self-understanding. It's a question of only comparing yourself with Swedish cities, or you compare yourself with Hamburg or something like that. You have to raise the ambition.
Yes, yes. Is there a risk with universities becoming too strong in a city? I'm thinking of, for example, Uppsala, which you showed a picture of.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes the people who do not belong to the university feel almost locked out.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can say, but actually, I think you can feel so, or you can omfavne. I don't know what's called.
Embrace. Yeah.
You can embrace it. You can also say that's a challenge for the city.
Yes.
Somehow to do something more.
Yes.
To raise the level, so they should just be grateful and then say, okay, we have to do something. And I know in Uppsala they are doing a lot and they have a high ambition. So it's more. I think it's they can challenge each other, and I think that competition is
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
One final question. You touched upon it. You said something along the lines of, in Sweden we are often cut off before we actually manage to take care of the details.
Yeah.
Please explain.
In Denmark, architects, we are starting from concept making, and then we finalize the day where the building is inaugurated, and we shake hands with our client. And we have been a part of the process the whole way. I think it's the same in Norway. In Sweden, I think in Nova we have been in the process for the whole building process.
In the Örebro project.
Yeah, but very often because at a specific time it's going to an entrepreneur or something like that, you have to have prices, and then of course they can compete with the Danish currency. That's one thing, but also with the architect doing the detailing. So there are specific offices in Sweden taking over, and they can do it more or less half the price, because you can cut down the number of drawings, and they are clever, and of course if you can save a lot of money as a developer. But I think we are missing the chance of having that respect. That's one thing, but also missing the chance to learn how important the detailing is, because it's you can see as soon as the developer takes over, then you have so big plugs to. Things are
the electrical plugs are suddenly dimensioned like that.
I think, and I know, because of course we read all the Swedish magazines, and I know the Swedish architects are fighting for it as well.
Very frustrated. It's a constant struggle in Sweden.
Yeah, it is, and I think we should just join forces and actually. It's not only a Swedish fight. It's a fight, and I think very often in Germany we have done youth project there lately, and it's exactly the same. It's so I think we have a unique situation in Denmark, maybe in Norway. I don't know. I think Norway it's the same, sort of. I think you have to get the experience of detailing and feel the joy of selecting the right stone and the facade, and and the window frames and so on. But it's really easy to like it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Helle Juul, for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.